Chippy.
All right, wonderful. So I'm Tina Thompson with the Tacoma Chamber and Visitor Center, wanting to extend a warm welcome to those that are attending virtually with us, and as well as those that are attending in person. So we'll continue to finish our lunches here while the presentation goes on. If you have questions, please feel free to email me or add them into the Zoom site, and we'll make sure we get those addressed here. If you're in person, feel free to raise your hand at any time, and we'll get those questions addressed as we move along here. At this time, we have with us Corey Dressel and Caleb Anderson from Amplify Digital Media, and I'm going to give the floor over to you. Thank you for sponsoring this event and going ahead with this presentation for us. So.
Thank you, Tina. So I'll try this real quick. Push the button here. There we go. Okay, just a second line. Sorry about that. So as Tina mentioned, my name is Caleb Anderson. Jeff, I'm hitting the button and it's not going back. There we go. Sorry. My name is Caleb Anderson. I work with We Enterprises, also known as Rally Media, also known as La Crosse Tribune, also known as Amplify Digital. We are a multi-service media agency that basically runs off of 3 different platforms. We have our print platform, which many of you are familiar with. We have our digital platform, which is our websites and our advertising there. And then we have the platform that I came to talk to you guys about today, which is Amplify Digital. I oversee the teams in western Wisconsin and eastern Minnesota. We work all the way up from Eau Claire down to Viroqua, as far east as Toma. We've got some advertisers in Madison, and as far west as about Houston County. I've been with the Enterprises, it's actually about 17 months now. And we have, as a team, helped over about 800 businesses in this area work on advertising campaigns, help them solve their problems and their needs as an advertiser. I live in La Crosse with my wife and 14-month-old daughter. And as it says in the very bottom there, pretty much like anything outdoors, I'm a very avid outdoorsman. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with this area, actually, is I grew up in eastern Wisconsin. I don't know if you're familiar with eastern Wisconsin, but it's pretty much cornfields and dairy farms. There's not a whole lot to do. So I do enjoy the mountains and the river, and really begun to enjoy this area of Wisconsin. So moving on to touch base on Amplify. So this is the company that essentially I work with and work for. And I won't go into too much detail here because I really want to dive into the marketing portion of this. But basically who we are is Google Premier Partners. Essentially what that means for you guys as an advertiser, it means many things for us, but for you guys as an advertiser, what that means is we have to have hours and hours of training in digital marketing each and every month. And most importantly is we have to have fixed pricing and fixed rates. I think this is very important as an advertiser, depending on the agency you're working with, depending on the marketing team that you're working with. A lot of different agencies are able to pocket or take certain management fees that we are not able to do. So it's very important for us. We also have to maintain a certain level of performance when it comes to marketing. So this is who we are, but most importantly, and this is why I'm going to dive into this, solution agnostic. Whether you're working with us currently or you're working with another media agency, what I really want to dive into right now is kind of the solutions, the products and the services behind digital marketing and what that entails. So as I move on to the next slide here, maybe, I guess, I'm not sure. Okay, master your marketing. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about marketing, why it's important, specifically why it's important to market during a crisis, learning from the history of marketing during crisis, and then basically digital products and services. As Tina mentioned, at any point, if anybody has any questions, if you're able to see them online or in person, please feel free to ask at the very end. I will ask again if you guys have any questions, but feel free to stop me. What I can tell you about digital marketing and being in this field, in this industry, and talking to hundreds of advertisers a month is, I never really know who I'm sitting down in front of. I don't know if somebody's been running digital marketing for 15 years and they're 10 times better at this than I am. I don't know if I'm talking to somebody who doesn't even know what a smartphone is. So I do understand there are a lot of differences when it comes to the level of engagement and experience behind digital marketing. So I'm going to dive into a little bit here about marketing in general. Unfortunately, for you guys as advertisers, hang on here. Unfortunately for you as advertisers, this is what marketing looks like for you today. So if you search marketing on Google, this is one of the first pictures you're going to find when you look at marketing. Unfortunately, it is extremely confusing. There are tons of different competitors, there's tons of different products, there's tons of different services, there's different points to those products and services, and a lot of times it can feel overwhelming as an advertiser. One story I like to share with people is our VP of sales for our entire company works closely with an advertiser, a car dealership in Indianapolis. And one week he asked him, how many phone calls or messages do you get from sales reps or multimedia agencies, marketing firms, so on and so forth in 1 week? He said, well, let me try writing this down and see what we come up with. Mind you, he has somebody who pays $40,000 a year called a gatekeeper in our industry that keeps people off that man. And in a 1 week period, at the end of that week, he asked this person, how many people got through your gatekeeper and actually got to you and had a conversation with you on the phone? And the answer is, if anybody wants to guess, in 1 week with a gatekeeper, how many people do you think contacted him? 41. 41 people got through that. It's actually higher answer than I normally get. 41 people got through that gatekeeper and got to that person. So I say that to let you know, we understand what it feels like, and we know what you're going through when we say, when we pick up the phone and give you a call, and we know we're not the only rep doing that or the only company doing that. You have a lot of options, you have a lot of people you're working with, and it can become extremely overwhelming. And at the end of the day, one thing I will tell you about digital marketing is everybody can run Google, everybody can run Facebook, everybody can buy from a programmatic exchange. So there's not a lot of differences sometimes when you're working with digital media companies and the differences between those. But I do want to make sure you understand your products and services. So why is marketing so important? You can't really see the very first word there, but it informs. You may understand your products and your services and what you guys have to offer, but do your customers, do they truly understand the different product or service that you have and what you're offering and what your special of the week is, or what you're coming out with next month? Marketing educates your customers, it teaches your customers and gives them the need to understand before they buy what different products and services you guys have. And most importantly, it communicates the value you bring to that product or service or consumer in a fun and interesting way. Number two, and one of the most important ones I think for an SMB, and when I say SMB, I may bring it up a couple times in this presentation. What I'm referring to is a small to medium-sized business. Marketing equalizes the playing field in many ways, depending on how long you've been in the area, depending on the platform you're working on, depending on the product or service you're using. You have the ability to compete with some of these big box stores, multinational companies, and you actually have an advantage to them. Not only can you pay equal to less pricing, get a better quality score, get a higher ranking on Google, get in front of people easier than they can. You have one advantage being a local or smaller business that they don't have, and it's customer retention. You have the ability to build that personal relationship with that customer that keeps them coming back over and over and over again. And I will tell you this, especially in an area like Toma, Wisconsin, or La Crosse, Wisconsin, or surrounding areas, one thing I have known or have come to realize in this area in the last 17 months is people love local. They love their local business owners. They love to support their local business owners, and marketing is a great way to maintain that relationship, which moves us on to the second or the third point here. It's sustained. Marketing really does help you grow a relationship with a customer, but it's not just a one-time fix. It's really kind of a ongoing strategy that basically helps your business grow by maintaining a relationship, whether it's through Google, it's through reviews, it's through social advertising with responses, it's in person. There's a lot of different ways where as a business owner and using marketing tactics, whatever it is you're using, you have a way to grow that relationship with consumers. Because at the end of the day, people want to buy into a brand and a person and a product, and they want to believe in those things, and they want to trust those things. It engages, again, I apologize, can't see the very top there, but at the heart of every business or every small business is consumer engagement. You guys, advertisers, would never make it without consumers, obviously. You'd never make it without the relationship with your consumers. But what it does is it keeps the conversation going with your customer. Because as I just mentioned, your audience wants to form a relationship with your brand. They want to get to know your brand. They want to get to know your different products and your services that you have to offer. People want to believe in something. They want to do their research on a product and know that it's a good product that comes from a good company with a good motto or source. It sells. Marketing at the end of the day helps you sell your product and services. Without marketing, a lot of businesses would not exist. It drives sales and it continues to lead people to your products. And then importantly, or most importantly, it grows. Overall, you can sustain your business model with current customers. You may even be able to grow a little bit, but the true growth between or behind a business is creating a new revenue stream, which is essentially a new customer. The best way to get in front of a new customer is through marketing, whether it's a current marketing tactic that you're already using or whether it's about branching into something else. So advertising during a crisis, obviously, we know what's going on. We can feel this each and every day. I can tell you, I personally work with many, many, many businesses, some of which are having the best year, the best 3 months they've ever had in 25 years. Other customers are going out of business. Depending on the industry you're in, depending on what your product is or your services that you're selling, you're probably either struggling very, very hard right now, or you're having a very, very successful month. So we understand when we're talking to people that we don't necessarily always know the situation or circumstance behind somebody and what they're going through this pandemic. But one thing I can tell you is pandemics, recessions, devastating events, they lead people into this, what we call crisis mode. I can tell you this, in the last 3 months, I have had, obviously we work for a print company, one of our biggest core products is print. I have had more people who have looked at me and said, I will never, ever, ever buy digital marketing, look at me the last 3 months and say, I need digital marketing, I need to figure out how to save my business, I need to figure out how to save it right now. Whether that's through e-commerce or it's getting people to buy their products on a different platform because they're not walking through the stores. And obviously nobody has the answer to how long stuff like this goes on. So we adapt, we survive, we move on, and we grow. But what I can tell you is a big reason why we are big believers, and not just because we're a marketing company, but we're very, very big believers in maintaining ad spend or finding unique ways, whether it's not even spending money, finding unique ways to market your business if you can't afford an agency or you want to do it from your desk at home. There are a number of studies that go back over a century that actually point out the advantages of maintaining or increasing ad budgets or increasing marketing expenditures during a time of crisis. And a big reason why that is while many businesses cut back during this time, if you maintain whatever product or service that you're currently running, you actually gain more market share at a better rate. And I'll go over in a second. What it does is it actually creates what's called a buyer's market in advertising. So advertisers that maintained or grew ad spend actually grew market share during the recession and afterwards. And here are a few examples. So in the 1920s, the Great Depression hit. Dry cereal category, Kellogg's is one of the few brands that actually maintained their ad spend during this time. And after the 1920s, they grew. I don't know if you guys have had this. I actually remember eating Snap, Crackle, Pop as a kid, but they grew their revenue by 30% year over year after the Great Depression. 1973, the energy crisis. I believe this was the first year they actually came out with the measurement miles per gallon. Toyota hit the advertising and marketing industry very hard, whereas Volkswagen actually pulled back. By 1976, Toyota was the largest U.S. car maker importer that sold cars into the United States. 1990s, the recession, quick service restaurants, McDonald's pulled back all their advertising. Pizza Hut, Taco Bell actually dove in head first. You can see Pizza Hut grew their revenue by 61%. Taco Bell grew their revenue by 40%, and McDonald's declined 28%. Not too long ago, 2001, 9/11, the unfortunate event of 9/11, General Motors came out. And one thing I want to talk about these last two that's very unique, General Motors and Amazon did this better than anyone. When 9/11 happened, General Motors realized they had to go in and they had to start advertising. And this is a very sensitive topic right now because I get this question all the time. Caleb, how the heck do you expect me to advertise right now in the middle of the pandemic? Does it send the wrong message? Does it create the wrong vibe? Does it make me look like I'm trying to grow my business in an area where most people are trying to survive? What they actually did is they found out the mindset of consumers for the most part stays the same, but a lot of people during the pandemic or during the recession actually changed into instead of a extra expenditure buying mode, they're moving into how can I save money? How can I find discounts? And General Motors came out with one of the most aggressive years they've ever had in 2001. Targeting those individuals who are looking to save money, discount, lower interest rates, free buying programs. And through that, Amazon did the same thing in 2008, 2009, when the economic downturn happened. They matched their consumer mindset and they grew sales 28%. General Motors actually pushed the US into the second best year in auto history they've ever had. And a big part of that, and this is what I talk to the advertisers here in these markets and the local market in La Crosse, is you have to move with your consumer. You have to know who your consumer is. You have to know how their mind is changing. And then you have to adapt to that mindset and advertise in that way. So there are very creative ways in doing this, depending on whether you're a 5 or 10 location advertiser or you're a 1 location advertiser. Again, the importance of marketing during a crisis. The noise level in the brand drops when the competition drops ad spend. But most importantly, and this is what I really tell people, again, one of the #1 responses to why should I advertise during a crisis, or why should I maintain some sort of marketing during a crisis, whether you're spending money or you're doing it at home by yourself, because branding shows that you have stability. More importantly than anything, if you see somebody pull back on advertising, the first thought is they must be struggling. When you're branding yourself and you get your name out there in front of a lot of people, it shows that you have stability as an organization, you have a good business model, and more than likely a very good product. Cost of advertising, as I mentioned before, drops. Lower rates actually create a buyer's market, they call it. When you cut back advertising, you lose your share of voice and mind, and basically you lose current sales most likely, and you have a very good chance of losing any future sales that you had in the pipeline, depending on how long your buying process is. And last but not least, increasing market share results in increasing profits. I need to stand closer to this thing. Okay. An introduction to digital. So this is where I'm going to change the model behind this. I'm going to dive into some different digital marketing tactics and services that any, honestly, media company offers. We're going to talk about how consumers use those tactics, the challenges behind them, and then how to take advantage of that as an advertiser. So here are a few different platforms we're going to talk about: desktop, laptop, smartphone, and tablet, and eventually a little bit of connected TV. And again, I may browse through some of these slides quickly. If anybody wants me to stop, go over a product or a service and explain what that is, maybe it's something you're running and you don't quite understand how it works. I can tell you this, one of the most frustrating things for us as an advertiser is when we sit down with someone and they say, yes, I've been running this. Whether it's been successful or not successful, I hope they know what the product or service is, and more importantly, what the point of that product or service is. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes advertisers make, is when they're using these products, they don't always understand not even how the product works, but what's the point of the product? Are you trying to get the phone to ring? Are you trying to get people to your front door? Or are you trying to build an audience where in 6 months or a year, now you start getting bigger business? So a perfect example of this is if you're a seasonal business and you're busy right now. You got all the time in the world in the winter, but you're busy right now. You don't need the phone to ring today. You got to turn to a different tactic and do more of a branding tactic. I'll get into that in a little bit, but it's basically to increase and grow your business in times where you're slow versus times where you're busy. But the most important thing, no matter who you're working with, no matter if you're doing this at home by yourself, or if you're working with an agency, or if you're working with us, the most important thing to start with is who. Again, very frustrating for us working in this industry, and we've done it, we're guilty of it ourselves, is sitting down with an advertiser and saying, here is a package that's going to solve all your problems. That's not the case. That package solves our problems as an advertiser. I'm telling you that right now, and we're still guilty of it. What we need to start with when we're looking at digital marketing is start with the who. Who is your audience? Who is your target audience? Who are you looking to connect with? Then we look at the how. How are we going to connect with that audience? And finally, then we start looking at the product or service or the platform. What are we going to use to target that individual? But the most important thing here is not taking a product or service and linking them with advertisers. It's taking advertisers and linking them with products or services. So again, your target audience, who you're looking to connect with, they have many different platforms that they can be found on, whether they're searching on the internet, they're watching videos, they're on social, they're shopping, foot traffic, they're on their own website. When you start diving into your target audience, you can get very, very specific in digital marketing. And this is where you have to be very careful. One of the things I've heard before is you can't waste a lot of money in digital marketing because you know you're getting your ad in front of somebody. That could not be further from the truth. Especially when you start getting very, very targeted in digital marketing. You can waste a lot of money in digital marketing. This is an exact profile we pulled on one of our campaigns that we're running, just to kind of show you how specific this gets. Male, age 30 to 35, married with 2 children, lives in Verona, Wisconsin, works in digital marketing, rents home, interested in sports, technology, outdoors, shops for new smart speaker. So when we're talking about buying this information and selling an ad to somebody who runs in a demographic or fits this demographic and looks just like this, we talk about buying this off of programmatic exchange. And I'm going to make this very simplistic because it can actually get very complicated. But basically all that is a company that sells buckets of data that we can go in and buy, and we can take your ads as an advertiser and serve them to the male who's 30 to 35 years old with 2 children because we bought that data. To get even more specific here, and this is probably the most technical I'll get in the whole conversation here, is When you're working with agencies, it's always important to work with an agency that buys unsegmented data versus segmented. And basically what that means for you guys as advertisers is if you're looking for a college tender, for example, that could be somebody who's 18 to 20 years old who's looking to go to college next year. And say you're looking to sell them sports equipment. You want to get right in front of that person. And so you're getting somebody interested in colleges because you know they're going in, they're going to be an athlete, they got a scholarship. You want to hit that individual. What you don't want to hit is the mom who's 38 years old who's also looking at colleges for her 17, 18-year-old son or daughter who's interested in the same thing. You want to target the correct individual. That's the difference. So a lot of companies, you have to be very careful when you're looking at data and you're targeting people because you can get too specific on some of this stuff, or you can get too general and you end up hitting an audience and wasting a lot of your money in digital marketing that you don't necessarily want to do. So again, just different platforms, different ways we can reach them on browsing, while they're watching, while they're posting on social media. And honestly, you guys can do this too, yes.
All right, and I might be jumping ahead of
No,
things.
go ahead.
I love digital marketing because you can get that specific. From my point of view, a college kid's carpet is a lot dirtier than a homeowner retiree's carpet. How do you translate that though to say paper or,
So
non-digital?
we are going to get into that in a second. And that's where I'm going to show is that's where, depending on the tactic you're using, you may or may not be using your correct tactic to reach that correct individual. Because I would tell you right now off the top of my head, I wouldn't run a radio ad. I wouldn't run a newspaper ad. I wouldn't run a TV ad. Depending on how quick of a turnaround you have and how specific you want to get to a college student, then it would change your tactic of what you're trying to run.
No,
For sure. What's
I
that?
want retirees.
Oh, so, okay, so then in that case, you could do a brand campaign with radio, TV, newspaper, or you can get more targeted to make sure the 31-year-old who actually picks up the newspaper or is watching the TV at the time, they're of no interest. So essentially you'd be wasting your advertising meeting in front of them. You can get more specific. I can tell you this, typically with marketing, especially digital, it does get more expensive the more targeted you get. But you're also serving your ad in front of a more qualified lead, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Little bit.
Can I get into more detail on it?
I just want to know how to take the detail that I can get with digital and put it in my paper ad, because like I am focusing on, I would rather have the retiree versus catching that college kid, even though I don't discriminate, I don't clean anybody's carpet, but so how do I take the convenience of being very specific with my digital ads and make sure I at least try to do that a little bit in the other platforms that are out there?
So that would be more of a, and I know we're talking about marketing here, that'd be more like a creative thing. So I would work with whether you're working with your own agency, you're working with us, or you're working from home, you have to kind of correlate that message. One thing I can tell you with marketing in general, less is more, but at the same time, always look at your demographic. Find out who the radio is reaching with their radio station you're using. Find out who the TV is reaching. Ask the newspaper company, if you're running a newspaper ad, what's the demographic you get in this specific zip code? And then I would tailor it around that. Depending on the size budget people have, there's different ways, and we'll get into it in a second, where you can actually hit 3 different aspects of advertising. We call this the Starbucks principle. I'll go over that in a second too, where you can actually make sure that you are hitting all 3 of those demographics in 3 different forms of advertising. So again, it's not as specific, it's not as easily trackable. I guess the short answer to your question is you can't as much. You can do it much more specific and digital.
Right, if I could just add to what Caleb's saying, it's basically down to, at that point, like newspaper, radio, it's the message, it's the creative that you're presenting, because one type of creative is going to speak to a younger demographic versus a different kind of creative, which is going to speak to an older demographic. If you're on the radio, a certain voice, age, tone, background music, all that kind of thing is going to change who is going to actually tune in and listen or pay attention to the ad that you're running.
And actually, a perfect example of this, and I just thought of this, is I'm running a campaign with a bank right now. When you run in the finance industry and digital marketing, you can't get very targeted at all. There's a lot of regulations and compliance behind it when you're talking about that industry. So you can't actually target based on age. Most of you advertisers in here probably can. But with this particular customer, we could not target age. We found out after running a campaign in the first month, their average age is 65 to 85 years old. And she's like, I don't want to target those individuals. We need to target younger. So now we start getting creative. We start looking at interests. Again, doesn't really answer your question. What we decided to do in this particular case is completely redo the creative. Throw young people on the picture. Throw diversity on the picture. Throw a piggy bank on the picture. And we found by just changing the creative to a younger demographic like that, we actually lowered it from 35 to 45. Still not where we need to be, but we were able to drop it down about 20, 30 years by changing that creative. Is that a little better?
Yep.
Okay. So moving on here. So again, this is kind of the battle you guys fight as advertisers every day. There's us right there, the amplified rep. You got your radio rep online, any other agency, outdoor rep. And what they're trying to do is throw a bunch of different products or services towards you. But you as an advertiser don't necessarily know which one of these to use to reach your target audience. So what I can tell you is, and obviously this is tailored to us because of the way we did this presentation, but whatever agency you're using or whoever you're using, whether you're doing this yourself at home or you're running with an agency, the key is not going through all these different products and services to reach your target audience. It's going through the correct product and service. And again, it kind of brings us back to what you were saying is first you find out the who. So we start on that end of the slide, find out who that is. Then you work your way backwards and find out the how and the what, and then put the package together. And I'll get into here again, kind of what I was saying about branding versus lead gen here in 1 second, but okay, so this is one of my favorite slides when we start talking marketing. And this really answers a lot of questions. So when you're looking at marketing, this might be a little aggressive in saying this, but there's really only two forms. I mean, there's a bunch of different words for these two forms, but at the end of the day, when you're looking to market, you're doing one of two things, or you're on two opposite ends of the spectrum. You're either awareness or you're lead gen. We call the top branding, we call the bottom lead generation. And this is where you'll actually get into what specific categories of products and services and what the point of those categories are. So when you're on the top, as we were talking before, non-target media, radio, TV, direct mail, billboards, newspapers, this is branding. Your goal in this is to get out in front of mass quantity audience. Your phone is not necessarily going to ring today. It could. It may not ring in a month, may not ring in 6 months, but when you have that downtime and all I've ever seen is the same ad on the radio or heard the same ad on the radio, heard the same ad on the TV, seen the same ad in the newspaper or on the billboard for the last 6 months, that's the only person I can think of, so I'm calling that person. That's branding. Not as targeted, not as measurable. The goal is to reach as many people as possible for honestly with the least amount of money as possible. As you slowly move down this, you move into interest, you move into consideration, you move into intent, eventually evaluation, and finally you move into the person that's saying, hey, I'm looking for that product right now. I need an ad, I need to see somebody who carries this exact product, and I need this product bought today. That's where you move into these different tactics. As you work down this, you'll see there's a little bit more targeted digital and print. There's brand presence with directory listings and content creation and media. There's connected TV, TrueView, a little bit of targeted social. Then there's remarketing. We're going to go into that in a second, how important that is for your business. And finally, at the very bottom here, most of you probably know what this is. We'll go into it in a little bit of detail, but it's PPC, Google AdWords, pay-per-click. I will touch base on this later in the presentation. It is one of the most boring forms of advertising that's out there, but it works better than anything. We make no money on it as an agency, but I will recommend it 100% of the time for your business if you need your phone to ring right now. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling with this thing today. What am I doing wrong, Jeff? There we go. Skipped a couple. I guess I'll maybe just click it from now on and wait a second. Sorry, guys.
It's a nice up close of your hand, though.
I know. Is there a button on here, Jeff? I can move it manually if this isn't working. I don't mind using a keyboard if that's faster. There we go. Okay. Yep, I'll do that. And then could you actually drag that box to the right so they can see the top left words? Because those are actually the most important ones on this, if you don't mind real quick. Yeah, because as we get into these, perfect. Up here real quick. Yep, that's fine. So I think I just got to wait a second because I already hit it. Here Here I'm talking about digital marketing, I can't even work a keyboard. Space bar should take you a little bit better. Okay. Anyway, just reiterating, again, starting with the who, moving into the how, and then the what. At the end of the day, we understand how complicated digital marketing can be. We understand how confusing it can be. It's confusing for us as an agency. I used to work in the wine industry, and one thing that was most frustrating about that industry, more than anything, is every day the rules and regulations change. And when I joined this industry, I was like, wow, the exact same thing goes on in this industry. They always have a new product. They always have a new service. They always have a new way of doing something. They always have a more expensive way of doing something. At the end of the day, those products, those services, those new ideas, they're great. They don't always work. Perfect. So we're going to start getting into the products and services here now a little bit. Website development. As we go through these products, I'll explain them a little bit. Some I'll fly over, some I'll go into more detail. If you guys have any questions about them, please let me know. All I'm going to tell you about website development is every time I sit down with an advertiser and they tell me I don't have a website, I don't need one, you're behind. I'm telling you, you are missing a major demographic or group of people that could potentially be future customers. So if you don't have a website, I'd really encourage you to get one. If you do have a website, some of the most important things about a website, make sure it's mobile, make sure it's mobile friendly, make sure there's easy contact us, make sure it's click to call, make sure people can find you easily. Make sure you have your products and services on there. 61%, actually more importantly, 67% of Wisconsin residents own a smartphone, and 8% of those, again, may not seem like a lot of people, but when you start talking 50,000 people across and do the math on it, 8% of those people, that's their only means of accessing the internet. Having a website is critical, especially with being found on Google, which we will go over shortly, and how important that is. Organic search. So again, I don't want to get too technical here, but basically what this is, as a matter of fact, I will actually go to the board. Those of you that are watching may not be able to see this. When you're searching something on Google, you'll see the spot here called ad. You go down a little bit further, you're going to see maps. You go down one step further, we call this organic search. I don't care if you gave me $10,000 today, I couldn't get you there tomorrow. If any agency ever walks in and promises that they can, don't give them your money because they're lying to you. This is very much like a credit score. It takes time. It is one of the best forms of marketing you could possibly have. At the end of the day, it's Google's world, we're just living it. The fastest you can get to there, I would say, honestly, is usually about 4 to 9 months, depending on what programs or services you're doing. One other thing I'll tell you is a lot of advertisers have ran SEO before. SEO is called search engine optimization. Essentially, the point of this is to get your website from page 2 to page 1 and eventually up to the top 3 listings in organic search. Don't waste your time or money. I think SEO is valuable, but I think it only works with certain. I think it only works for certain advertisers if you're wanting to just get over that tiny little hump that you've been fighting for a while. And the reason I say that is if you don't have the $1 million budget, which nobody really does, then I would say you can actually build your SEO. You can move your website up Google's rankings to be found. And the reason why this is important is your top 3 organic searches. So if I search restaurants, Toma, and if you scroll past the paid ads, you scroll past the maps, and you see Tap House, 4 down or 3 down or 2 down, those top 3 spots, essentially, I forget the exact percentage, but it's over 50% of the clicks on Google you get if you're in those top 3 spots. There's nothing I can do in advertising to get you there right now. It'll take time. There are things you can do. There are programs you can do by just running some basic advertising. If you're working with a TV station right now, if they have a massive audience online, if you run billboard ads on the TV station and you're hitting a massive audience, you're increasing your SEO. You're moving your way up Google. If you're working at the radio station, if you're working with us and you're doing the same thing, and they both have a monster reach volume when you're talking, hundreds of thousands of users per month, and you're just running basic ads, if they run a story on you, things like this increase your SEO. Don't ever buy it as a standalone product unless it makes sense for you. You can waste a lot of money on this. So organic search, this is where you ultimately want to be as an advertiser, more importantly than anything, because at the end of the day, if we got you there today, or if you are there right now, there's things you can do to maintain that status. That's the most important thing you guys can do as advertisers to keep the volume coming from a consumer standpoint. Directory listings, I'm not going to go into this too much. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of directory listings. It's a very cheap process. It's a very cheap product. I do think bang for your buck, you're going to get a lot. But at the end of the day, if you're not running a $5,000 a month campaign and everything else you're doing, I wouldn't even be interested in running something like this. I think there's better options that can serve you to get the job done. But the reason I left this slide in here, and the reason I do want to talk about it, as business owners, one thing you guys can do for yourselves, it does not cost you any money, reply to reviews. Google actually says you should reply to a review within 24 hours. If you don't, I think it's, I have the statistic on here, there might be a statistic somewhere in here, I think it's somewhere like 92% of people actually will pass by a business if they have more bad reviews than good reviews. So you always want to reply to a review. You can't always delete reviews. You can hide them sometimes. You can hide comments sometimes, but always reply as a business owner, because even if there's a bad review and you reply to them and you say, hey, how can I help you, or how can we work through this? It shows you a customer service. It shows you're willing to fix a problem and move on. One of the most frustrating things is when we start diving into some of this stuff with people is they don't take the time to go through the reviews. It doesn't cost you anything, and I promise you, people are now turning more and more to checking reviews on services than they have in the past. So it's something you can do without costing any money for yourself that is very effective.
Even if it's a positive review, we reply to that too.
You can, there's not really a whole lot of statistics behind saying it helps you or hurts you. I just think it does show some sort of interaction. I would always reply to reviews, even if it's a simple thank you. I always believe in replying, whatever the review may be. So targeted display. You'll know this by a couple different words. Audience targeted display, programmatic display, audience extension, a bunch of fancy terms. At the end of the day, all it means is you're going to hit an advertiser, or sorry, you're going to hit a consumer with a certain demographic with an ad on whatever platform or program they're using. Again, this is 65% of all money spent in advertising in 2020 will be spent on programmatic. You can't see the word there, but it's programmatic. Essentially what that means is targeted display. I am not a huge fan of targeted display by itself. I think you have to have some sort of remarketing tactic with it, but the one nice thing about targeted display is if you have a very specific demographic and you're looking to reach a very specific clientele, 24 to 28 years old, who makes under $30,000 a year, who lives in this zip code, who has a mortgage and has a net worth of this, that's when you start diving into audience targeted display. It's very, very, very specific. But again, as I said earlier, you got to be careful when you get that specific. You can waste money very easily in marketing because you miss a big demographic that you'd be looking to reach. But essentially what this is I think there's even maybe another slide on this. So it's some different targeting we can do: demographic, information, browsing behavior, in-market interests, content, search habits. I believe we can target political affiliations. I believe we can target religious affiliations. There's a lot of different things you can do here. One really important thing I'd actually like to touch on is if you have somebody that, or you want to target somebody that's interested in different products or services. So for example, I worked with a credit union. They wanted to target people in La Crosse, Wisconsin that had an auto loan. They were interested in refinancing that auto loan. We found out there was X amount of people in Wisconsin. That doesn't mean they all were interested in refinancing their auto loan. Based on their search history and what they do on Google and Facebook and everything else, we can go in and find out that person's actually looking to refinance their auto loan right now. So they were able to go in and serve an ad to this individual and offer them a better rate, or interest rate, if you will, to get in front of that person. So again, targeted display is just a very, very targeted form of marketing. I don't want this to go too many times if I click it again. Okay, so social media content. This is a big one. This is something you guys can do from home. This is something I don't recommend that all the time. I'm going to go into why in a second. I'd almost rather you use an agency because I think you get more bang for your buck. This is something you can do from your desktop, and a lot of people do that. One thing to know about Facebook, though, there's a difference between a Facebook post, a Facebook boosted post, a sponsored ad, and a paid ad, which is essentially the same thing. And what that is if you have 500 followers, you have 2,000 followers, understand that if you just put an ad on Facebook, with the new algorithm that Facebook has out, you only hit 2% of your followers. Now that doesn't mean people aren't going to go in and like it, they're not going to share it, they're not going to comment, which produces more results, but on average, you hit 2% of your followers. It's unfortunate, but it is the way Facebook's designed right now because they need to make money. One thing I will tell you about Facebook though, in 2016, Facebook got into a lot of trouble because Cambridge Analytica came in and bought a lot of data during the 2016 election that they were not allowed to buy. Because of it, Facebook tanked. Mark Zuckerberg came out and apologized profusely for this. Because of that, and ever since then, Facebook's very inexpensive. So if you don't have that monster budget, or you don't have, if you don't think you have a monster budget, or you think you have very, very minimal money to spend, there's nothing wrong with going on Facebook, boosting posts, and reaching more people. You can do it from your couch if you want. Their Facebook actually has really good programs right now that teach you how to do it, if you have the time to do that. One thing I will tell you about using an agency is, whether it's us or a competing agency, we want you guys to stay in business and to do well. We hope we gain some sort of business from any aspect of marketing, but without you guys staying in business, without advertisers learning how to grow their business, we lose customers too, and we don't want that. So if you're working with an agency, you're really happy with them. The reason why you want to work with agencies on Facebook is because, on average, an agency will take arbitrary number, $1,000. You sit at home on your computer, you're going to put $1,000 into Facebook, and again, arbitrary number here, that $1,000 is going to go into Facebook. I don't know what kind of results you're going to get, but on average, statistics have shown that using an agency, you give them that same $1,000. With ours, we're going to put anywhere from $150 to $200 in our pocket as a management fee. We're going to throw $800 in Facebook. What I can tell you is, we get 1.25 to 2.5 times the conversion rate that you would sitting at your house. So you actually produce more results. I'm not going to tell you that a competing agency won't do the same. Statistics show a lot of digital agencies, if they work well with Facebook, do the exact same thing. So I'm telling you, you're welcome to do it at home. Matter of fact, if you just want to throw a couple $100 a month into Facebook, I do think you'll reach more people. I wouldn't necessarily use an agency for that. I'll try boosting your posts on your own, see how you can do it. If you're happy with the results, great. If you're not, and you want to try something different, then reach out to whoever your contact is. But Facebook is, and I keep saying Facebook, but it's really Facebook and Instagram. And the reason why that is, oh, I thought this was my next slide. Oh, it was. 55% of Facebook users are 35 years old and under, and 71% of Instagram users are 35 and under. So it's owned by the same platform. Essentially, when we talk social marketing, if you're doing this, I would recommend running on both sites, so you're hitting both demographics. Now, again, you can get targeted on this stuff, so that if you have a certain age or person you're looking to hit, you can do that as well. But again, see on the bottom there, Facebook algorithms change. You reach 2% of followers. We don't really need to go through that. For the sake of everyone's time, I'll keep moving here. Remarketing. So this is a really, really important tactic. If you guys are currently running marketing, I always recommend using this. And the reason why is it's very inexpensive. It does not cost you much money. If you're using social marketing, you can remarket. If you're using targeted display, you can remarket. You can remarket through Facebook. You can remarket through your website. Remarketing has one of the highest conversion return on investments out of any product you can use. The problem with remarketing is you have to market first. You cannot remarket without an audience. So if you're going out and you're running a program right now that you're getting good results on, if you haven't tried remarketing, I'm not telling you to increase your budget. Maybe pull your budget back from the tactic you're going out and reaching those people with, and try putting it on a remarketing tactic. I think it's a better way for you to drive conversions and to get more people. But essentially what that does, say we're using mobile location targeting. If I walk through a department store and I see an ad for a new hunting bow that came out, and I really like that bow, I click on it and see what the ad is. Okay, I don't have time to look at it right now. I put that in my pocket. Later at night, when I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching ESPN or I'm watching a game and I'm on my phone again, all of a sudden I see that ad. Well, I'm a much higher conversion rate than somebody who didn't click on it yet, because I've already shown interest on going to your website. They will continue to serve me that ad for the next 30 days. Whether it's on Facebook or on through websites or different platforms, it's an extremely important tactic. So if you're not using it and you're already running a campaign, I would encourage you to use it. Again, I'm not telling you to spend more money. I would just say utilize your money in a way where you can actually get higher conversions with a less expensive tactic.
And that's only if they've already shown interest in that particular campaign.
Yeah, typically you'll remarket to somebody who's actually clicked on an ad, not just who's seen the ad. They'll usually click on it, they'll interact in some way. Or if the other thing that works with remarketing too is if I'm searching on Google and you're fortunate enough to have your website come up and I click on your website, you can remarket that individual too who's already shown interest. If you have, some people have products that take 3 months to sell. Other people have products that they'll be interested in sell consistently. So remarketing, depending on what your purpose is. Yeah, exactly.
Well, for example, like Leslie, right? Somebody might look up carpet cleaning and they might go to a number of different websites for carpet cleaning to compare to see what they're like without actually making a decision yet. Well, then Leslie in a remarketing campaign, her ad would come up to that consumer, reminding them, hey, you really want to come back. And they found that that is far more effective than the initial ad in the first place, or however they got there in the first place.
Thank you, Corey. Another tactic here, and again, I will keep moving. I didn't realize what time it is again, but customer match remarketing, I won't spend much time on this. This is kind of unique. It's one of those new, cool, not new, but cooler tactics that not a lot of people use. I've come across advertisers before that say, hey, I have an extensive list, email list, and I've emailed these people once a month, and I'm starting to lose interest, and I'm not getting the results, the open rate, what I want to before. Do you have a way that you can market my email list without actually marketing via email? Because who likes to receive more emails in 2020? Not me. We can actually take that email list, scrub the list, and remarket those people on Facebook. So you can actually serve ads to these people that you have email addresses for on Facebook. So if it's something you're doing as an advertiser and you want to try something different, you have the capabilities of doing this. It's kind of cool. Again, wouldn't necessarily lead with this product, but it's a good support product. Mobile location targeting. This is probably one of the coolest, if you will, tactics in digital marketing. A lot of people like it. What I can tell you is don't ever buy this product by itself. Never, ever, ever buy this product by itself unless you're targeting an event with a specific, so for instance, I have an advertiser who sold ATVs. He wanted to target everybody that came to the boat show in La Crosse in 2019. So we were able to go back to that La Crosse center, fence off the building, and serve ads to those people that would be possibly interested in ATV. That's about the only time I would actually ever recommend mobile location targeting by itself. I cannot tell you how many times I've sat down in front of an advertiser, they said, I've ran mobile location targeting and I have no results. And I said, I believe you. It does not work as a good standalone product. It's cool, and that's what gets it to sell. And it's a great product. I'm going to explain why in a second, but I would never run this by itself. You would have to have some form of remarketing or branding with it to build some credibility. So the way mobile location targeting works, there's two different forms. You have geofencing and you have mobile lookback. So if you're running this campaign right now, geofencing is saying, I want to target this area right now. So for the next 30 days, anybody whose phone walks through that area, that phone raises its hand and says, serve me an ad. Or, like I just mentioned, there's look back technology. You can go back a year and you can target an individual who's gone through a department store or through whatever fence you want to put up and serve that person an ad. What I can tell you is, if you're doing this, I'll ask your company, if you're working with a company, make sure that they don't target based off of radius. Most companies target based off of 1 mile, half-mile radius. The problem with that is, if I'm a home improvement store and I'm selling a special on bathrooms, and I want to target everybody who's walking into Home Depot, what I don't want to hit is everybody walking into Quick Trip, everybody walking into the mom and pop cupcake shop across the street. I want to hit people walking into Home Depot. Some companies do, but make sure they have the technology to be able to go in and use, again, this skipped one. Polygon technology, you can actually go in with mobile location targeting and fence off buildings and parts of buildings. I work with a home improvement company, very similar to what I just said. We were able to go in and actually fence off the northwest corner of Home Depot. We know they sell bathroom equipment to make sure we're only getting people that are in the bathroom section of Home Depot interested in their ads. And that's how the local customer was targeting Home Depot and hitting their consumers. Again, I think it's very cool. You just gotta be very careful with this app because you can waste a lot of money in it. IP targeting, I'm not going to go into this too much. If anybody's doing direct mail, this is basically the digital version of direct mail. You can use those physical addresses to hit IP addresses within the household. It's just cheaper, and you can run it more, hit more people. Again, not something I'm a huge fan of, but it is something, if you are a big fan of direct mail, I do think it's more effective. Email solutions. So as I mentioned, another product I could take or leave sometimes, depending on the person and who you're using. If you're using an email list or using a targeted email list, you know, in 2005, 2010, when somebody got an email, sure, they were probably like, hey, I got 10 emails today, I can't wait to open 9 of them. In 2020, I wake up in the morning and go, I got 600 emails today, how do I delete 300 by 8:05? So I'm not a huge fan of email marketing for that reason exactly. I think you gotta get creative in your message. I think you gotta get creative in how you actually reach an individual. But one really cool thing about email marketing in today's day and age, what we're able to do is you can get very, very specific with your email solutions. You can start targeting on demographics, interests, lifestyle, behavior, categories. This is, I'm almost positive we can do this with a political affiliation or religious affiliation if interested in that. Again, very measurable. You can tell open rates, when it's opened, how many people clicked on the link inside. Very, very specific. But again, if anybody's walking your door saying all they got is email targeting, I would not necessarily listen to what they have to say. If they have other things to go with this and it's a great program, give them the time of day. Targeted streaming services. So again, I'll roll through this kind of fast, but by 2022, online videos will make up 82% of consumer traffic, 15 times higher than it was in 2017. 6 out of 10 people would actually rather watch a video online than go through a display ad. And I only think it's gonna get worse as time goes on. People have no patience these days. They don't wanna just click on an ad and do a bunch of reading. They want a video to tell a story and show a product or service. It is just the way it is. I can tell you this, in 2004, I believe it is, they came up with a study that said somebody had to see an ad 6 to 8 times before they would actually convert, which means click on the ad or call or whatever it may be. In 2020, the same company ran a study and found out people have to see an ad 15 to 25 times now before they're interested in actually clicking on an ad. I do think when you're in Tacoma, Wisconsin versus Madison or Milwaukee, I think those statistics might change a little bit, because I don't think you guys are as saturated and overwhelmed with ads as some of the bigger cities are. But nonetheless, people don't have the patience, so people are turning to video. So there are targeted streaming services, and I'll go through these fairly quickly. Rise of the cord cutters, basically 33 million adults are cutting the cord in 2000. I think this was 19, to be honest with you on this one. The real reason why I'm touching on this is, the biggest reason this is because cable TVs are raising prices to keep up with the times. Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, all these platforms came out and they're selling their services at basically the cheapest price ever. And what did Netflix come out with? First $5.99. Now it's not, it was $9.99. I don't know what it is anymore. I paid a bill every month. I have no idea what I paid for Netflix. But I did find out about a week ago they're raising their price by $1. That may mean nothing for you as an advertiser board. It means $1.5 billion to Netflix. So again, there are so many different ways to read and watch videos and hit people. It just depends on where, when, how saturated is that market. Streaming services are unique because you can be kind of targeted on them. I don't know if I have that on this slide or not. Yeah, so just in lacrosse alone, I actually did the math on this to make sure the statistic was right, because it blew my mind at first. In 2020, Lacrosse, Wisconsin consumers are projected to spend over $2.4 million on streaming services. That seemed way too high for lacrosse. And then I did the math, it comes out to about $48 per person. That's nothing. I actually would argue it's probably higher than that. But again, you know, so one of the questions I was asked the other day was, how are you able to target people with streaming videos? Well, when you sign up for Hulu and Netflix, what are the things you have to give them? Your age, your gender, your location. So if you want to go in and take a targeted streaming service and say, millions of people are on Netflix, I want to hit somebody who's 22 to 24 years old, male who lives in Lacrosse, Wisconsin, female who lives in Baroqua, whatever it may be, you can go in and take that information and now target those individuals while they're watching Netflix or Hulu and then remarket that. I will tell you this, before anybody asks, it is one of the more expensive services when you're talking digital marketing. It does start at a higher premium. So just know that if you are ever interested in moving forward, it is one of the more expensive forms of marketing. Again, share of voice in households, Netflix makes up 73%, YouTube 50%, Amazon 36%, and Hulu 28%. I'll skip through over this, but basically CTV, OTT, just different terms they use for the smart TVs and the way we actually contact those users. So YouTube TrueView, one thing I'll mention on this, I don't know if anybody's tried this. This is kind of a newer tactic I found when talking to a lot of advertisers. 45% of marketers plan on using YouTube TrueView. This is something you could do from your house too. It's a little more complicated, but if it's a tactic you wanted to try, the one nice thing about YouTube is Nielsen came out about 6 months ago, and now they're measuring TV ratings by live +7. What that means is, if you're anything like my wife and I, if we're recording a show at night, the last thing we want to do is sit and watch commercials. So we scroll through the commercials if we're able to do that. Those still get counted as a TV view. The reason why YouTube is very cool and unique is you only get charged based on a certain percentage of the video that you actually consume. You can tell if somebody muted the video, you can tell if they unmuted the video, you can tell if they finished the video, you can tell how long they actually watched the video and if they click through to your website. It's just a very measurable device. Again, it's a little bit more pricey of a product, but it's very unique because it's very measurable. And in our industry, we're very much about measurement and ROI. Video production, I'll skip over that. See, streaming. Okay, so streaming audio, essentially what this is same thing as streaming TV. You can reach people on the different platforms you're using. You can get targeted with this, whether it's Spotify, Pandora, whatever it may be. I'm actually a radio guy. I love listening to the radio. But if I'm working on the gym or I'm running on the side of the road or whatever, usually I'm listening to Spotify or something like that. But this is where you can go in, again, target on age, gender, affinities, location, demographics. Paid search. So this is something I want to touch on for a second, because I think all of you in this room, if you've ever tried digital marketing, have probably tried this or are currently running this. This is one of the most important tactics if you need your phone to ring right now. If you need somebody in the door tomorrow, if you're looking for business, if you're looking to try to save your business, this is a really, really important tactic. Again, this is a product you could do from your house. You could you could go through Google, they train you, and they teach you how to do this stuff. You gotta be very careful with it again, because depending on how much money you're putting into it, you know, Google takes a lot of money on a lot of the things, and they'll train you on how to use it, but if you're not doing it right, you know, PPC, one of the things people talk about are positive keywords. So basically what PPC is, let me explain this for a second. Those of you on the video can't see this if you don't know, but where it says ad right here. And I know one of the first questions I'm probably gonna get is, Caleb, I never click on one of those that say ad. I'll go over that in a second because I hear it all the time. But this is essentially where it puts your ad when you're on Google. It's extremely important, especially if you're higher up on the organic listing, especially if you're already in Google Maps and you throw your ad there. This is what we call the Starbucks principle. You're driving down the highway, you see a sign for Starbucks, you think, maybe I'd like a cup of coffee. You see the next billboard 5 miles on the road, you're thinking, no, I really want a cup of coffee. By the third sign, you're getting off and you're getting a cup of coffee because you've seen them on 3 different platforms or 3 different times. It's kind of the same thing with PPC, but what this essentially does is it gets your business in front of somebody who's actually looking for your product or service. Using yours, for example, cleaning services, Tomo, Wisconsin. You type that in, your ad pops up right there. It's the first one seen. Now, the number one question I get all the time is, Caleb, nobody clicks on those ads. Well, I can tell you, I just ran a report for a senior living facility in Trempealeau, Wisconsin, who was concerned that there's not enough search volume and nobody clicks on those ads in Trempealeau, Wisconsin for assisted living. What I can tell you is if they wanted to, based on the ratings they gave me, they would spend $8,400 a month. That's the amount of people that click on assisted living in Trempealeau, Wisconsin. So I would argue with you when you say nobody does click on those ads, they do click on those ads, and I can tell you how much and how many times people click on those ads in a month. They're very effective. Again, if you're looking to do anything, if you don't want to work with an agency and you want to do it from home and you think that this is something you understand fairly easy, try this tactic first. It's very, very good at bringing business and getting your phone to ring immediately. Again, I guess this slide would have been probably better to explain the paid ad and kind of where it's located. But basically, we call these sections A, B, and C. Now, they have organic a little bit higher than maps, it looks like on this one. But generally, paid search is A, B is usually maps, and then C is your organic search. And again, that's the most important. But there's nothing I can do for you today to get you there. And I'm almost done here, guys. I think I only have a couple slides left. Dynamic call tracking. This is another tactic we're using when working with a customer. This, I would argue, this tactic is almost more important for the agency or the advertiser than it is the business. And I joke, but the truth is in saying that is the reason why is we've ran campaigns before. We ran dynamic call tracking. For example, we worked with a pizza company actually that ran dynamic call tracking. At the end of the first month, they said, it's not working, we haven't run our business, blah, blah, blah. I forget what their reason was. So we dove in and we said, hey, would you give us a week to just make sure we're looking at analytics and make sure that we're looking at this right? What we found out is they're picking up the phone and taking 5 minutes to take a credit card over the phone. During that time, they're losing 2 or 3 phone calls on a Friday night every 5 minutes that they're taking that order. What they found out is they missed out on so much business. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm hungry for a pizza on a Friday night, nobody's picking up the phone, I'm calling the next place right away. Dynamic call tracking is a very unique, it costs nothing a month. I mean, it's literally just an addition onto whatever you're gonna run. But if you're running with an agency, see if they offer dynamic call tracking. It's a great way to measure. At the end of the month, you can find out name, location, address, phone number, when they called, how long it was. You can listen to the phone call. Quality assurance purposes at bare minimum, you can use for dynamic call tracking. It's just, to me, it's a very, very specific way to measure a campaign. I actually just worked with a rep last 2 days. One sold a $45,000 trailer. Another guy sold a $32,000 tractor. We heard it right on the dynamic call tracking. So we know that that ad came from us and we were able to measure that. Again, you'll hear me say this all the time. We're very, very much, or anytime you're looking at this, you should be very, very much about ROI, return on investment. Where's your money going? How is it being utilized? So I will tell you this, whether it is our agency, an agency you're working with, if you ever dabble into digital marketing, you should ask for about 3 different things. One is access to a dashboard. You should be able to go in as an advertiser and go into your reporting, and if you don't understand it, explain what exactly is happening in real time. How many people are actually interested in my ad? What are they doing? Is my bounce rate high? Does that mean they don't like my website? Does that mean they didn't like my offer? You know, if you have an ad that goes out and you have an extremely high click-through rate, but nobody's actually buying the product or are moving through the ad, then I would argue you probably had really good creative. You probably had poor targeting. You probably had the wrong individual with a good ad. If you have low click-through rate, very high conversion, you probably had terrible creative, but you probably targeted the right people. There's a lot of different things you can go in and find out about these campaign dashboards. And I'll tell you this, again, I sat in front of a conference before with 6 of my reps in there with their advertisers. If they're not doing this each month, they're not doing their job. We've got to dive in. We've got to go over the analytics. And we've got to show people what their return on investment is. And we should be doing this monthly.
Okay, so that's it. So my question was gonna be, what's the time frame before you readjust someone's campaign for them? Obviously, you're gonna start off with many modalities to this approach, and then it's adjustable,
Yep.
correct?
So with our agency specifically, this is what I tell people. We ask for a 90-day minimum when running a digital marketing campaign. What I will tell you is there's really no right or wrong answer on how quickly you should change it to go off this. Our standard we set for ourselves is every 30 days you should be going over reporting. But that doesn't mean, especially on a PPC campaign, so to explain how that works, if somebody's clicking on the ad, then you get charged for the click. And based on how much you're charging, the click, cost per click and all these different things. But if you're running a PPC campaign and you got $5 a month to spend on that campaign, if week 2 you've blown through that $500 and we cap it out, as an agency, we have a responsibility to come to you and say, just so you know, you've already blown through your $500 in 2 weeks. Instead of waiting until the end of the month to tell you that, we should already be making adjustments. What that means is then we either need to change the targeting so that we're actually hitting the $500 worth over a month, or we come to you and say, hey, we miscalculated your budget, whether it's up or down. You can check that. I would say that's probably one of the #1 questions I get when it comes to creative and campaigns. How often do we change them? That's really up to you. It's really up to your offer. It's really up to what you're trying to do. But I would say at least monthly, you should be going in and making adjustments. And I think that's about it. All I got for here.
Caleb, can you clarify that? Only because we have the 3-month minimum, and maybe can you elaborate on the point of the 3-month minimum versus, going in and looking at it monthly and making adjustments?
Yeah, so I said from an advertiser before, looked them straight in the eye and said, I'm almost positive this is going to work for you. And it's going to be phenomenal. You know why? Because in this city over here, you have the exact same advertiser running the exact same program, the same demographic, and it works phenomenal. After week 1 or week 2, I come back to advertiser with my head down, my tail between my legs, and I say, well, I was wrong. That didn't work well at all. However, if you give me the opportunity, I do believe we can adjust this based on some of the findings or reporting that we've seen to come in and make a change for you. Typically, what we've found is if it can be done, we never guarantee it'll be done. But if it can be done and it can be done digitally, whatever agency you're working with, usually about 90 days is a really good general rule of thumb to give somebody month-over-month ability to optimize that campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there might be factors, a holiday that has come into play, a snowstorm that disrupted people's normal habits and going out shopping. So there might be factors in there that aren't a normal factor, and you need that longer extended time to be able to truly see the behaviors of your customer. Yeah, right.
And then here's just a couple different ways that you can go in and finish tracking average sale, closing rates, number of calls. Again, honestly, diving into website analytics, that's what I encourage all of you guys to do. Even if you're not running with an agency, if you're not spending any money, find out a way to access your Google Analytics, dive into your website, find out what your bounce rate is, if your bounce rate's good, if your bounce rate's bad. I can tell you this, take one of my cards, whether you do this with us ever, take one of Corey's cards, ask her about bounce rates, analytics, dive into your website and find out if people like you or not. I mean, it sounds crazy to say this, but I've had to walk into people, tell them their baby's ugly and here's why, and help them with either rebuilding a website, trying something different. There's so many things you can find out in Google Analytics and it costs you nothing to do that. So dive into Google. It is extremely confusing. Yep.
Do you guys offer a service to revamp websites?
We do, yep. So we redo websites, and we have a whole team of individuals that run that out of Amplify. It has nothing to do with me specifically, but if you reach out to Corey, we can, she gets you in contact with somebody like that. But I will tell you, it is really important, whether you got a really nice website or you don't, at least dive into it and find out if people like it or not. You can tell a lot about it. If you're not sure on a certain statistic, I'd be happy to take your phone call or your email real quickly and go over it with you. You start looking at, Google Analytics and it looks like you're, looking at a maze. I mean, it's very, very confusing when you start diving into the numbers. I think.
Do you work with co-ops?
We do. So depending on the co-op, we work with them directly. Sometimes we found out the advertiser actually has a better relationship with the co-op, so it's better that they work with them. But we do contact and work with co-ops individually, yes. Sometimes they're the biggest pain in the butt, but they do give you free money. So you can't hate on them too much. Any other questions? And Tina, I don't know, did we get any questions on? Okay.
So last question here.
Yeah.
What do you do when one of the problems that we're running into is where the head is?
Okay.
So we're kind of taboo with hitting certain modalities of digital marketing. Have you worked with him?
Yes, so CBD, COVID, depending on the assisted living facility, those are 3 categories you run into problems with Google. What I can tell you is, when we're working with Google, we're Google Premier Partners. So we always brag Google picks up the phone when we call them. Sometimes that's not the case, especially when you start talking needs, they're getting overwhelmed with this type of industry. So sometimes the lag time's a little bit further behind. But what I can tell you is, at minimum, your agency or us, we can take that work off your plate. We're happy to do the work for you. I just will tell you this, I would never promise a timeline, because I've given timelines before that Google's given me and they've been wrong, and I look like an idiot because we're 3 months overdue on what we thought we'd get an answer on. So it can be very difficult. Those are very sensitive topics to Google right now, and Facebook. But yes, we do work with that, and we try to find ways around that.
Well, there's definitely ways around it because we'll be on Facebook and we'll see an ad,
Yep.
you know, from a CBD company or like, we're an actual franchise. How did this local person like come up here?
Yeah, so if you're working like in an industry with drugs or alcohol addiction, that's a big one too. There's actually agencies that you can buy basically information from or work through that work forever with Google and Facebook. Sometimes it can be very expensive. I don't think in the hemp industry or CBD necessarily you go through that, but you may. But sometimes you have to pay a certain fee to get over that, and they just make sure you're legal and up to code and everything. So, any other questions? If you guys have any questions, like I said, Corey and I's business cards are there. Be happy to answer anything. You know, I understand the headaches people go through in digital marketing. Like I said, it changes every day. We deal with it all the time. So,
Caleb, I know I'm gonna interrupt you here, but just really quick, a question that I get very often has to do with how relevant digital marketing is out in the community like Toma versus like lacrosse. A lot of people are under their preconceived conception that that is not something that's as applicable out here as it would be, say, in lacrosse.
so I've gotten that question actually from people in West Salem and Toma, and I'll make it very quick because I know we're out of time here. There's no statistic behind what I'm about to tell you, just based on what I've seen, is I would actually argue digital marketing is more effective in smaller rural communities because you have less distraction of the 15 competing medias, the 100 billboard ads, the 5 radio stations, the 16 radio stations, the 5 TV stations, whatever it may be. So my argument would be in a smaller community, I actually think digital marketing is more effective, especially like a social marketing type aspect, because you are reaching people who at the end of the day, they're going to sit on their phone and do something, whether it's in a small community or a larger community. So with that, Tina, thank you. I appreciate your time. Sorry I went over
No, not
a
at
few
all.
minutes. So
That was wonderful. If there are any follow-up questions, like I said earlier, you guys can email me. I can get you to Caleb or Corey if you don't grab their cards or think of something later or whatever. A couple quick things. Just wanted to let everybody know we are doing a night market. I can't talk apparently. Night market coming up on October 29th. Details are on our website. A little bit more information to come, but we're just trying to kind of spur off the holiday shopping season with an outdoor socially distanced event where you can, you know, buy some food from food vendors, do a little bit of your holiday shopping, grab a beer, enjoy a campfire, and that kind of thing. So that is coming up soon. Just really want to thank, we've gone back and forth many times with Caleb and Corey to go over the content for today, but really hoping that we gave you guys some resources that can help you kind of market your business as we're trying to figure out what this road to recovery looks like. Again, always reach out to the chamber if you have any questions or if you think that there's something we should be doing or not. And we can pivot to, I hate that word. We can pivot to try and meet your needs. So we are here for you. That being said, thank you all that were able to attend in person and all of you that were able to join us online. And thank you to Jeff Cram for setting it all up for us. Thanks, everyone.
thanks.